When Cora first received the heartwarming surprise of business-class plane tickets from her daughter, she couldn't contain her excitement. The prospect of flying had always been accompanied by a hint of anxiety, but this thoughtful gesture from her daughter promised to make the experience far more comfortable and enjoyable. Little did she know that her journey was about to take an unexpected turn, one that would leave a lasting impression. As the airplane gradually filled with passengers, a moment of bewildering astonishment unfolded for Cora. A flight attendant, seemingly stern and serious, approached her seat. The atmosphere shifted as the attendant politely, yet firmly, requested Cora to leave the business class cabin. It was a moment that would later weigh heavily on her heart, leaving her with a sense of regret that she would carry long after the flight had ended. Cora's initial reaction to the flight attendant's request was one of bewilderment. She raised her eyes, her expression a mixture of confusion and disbelief. At first, she wondered if she had misheard or misunderstood the attendant's words, but when the attendant repeated the statement, it became painfully clear. "Ma'am, I'm going to have to ask you to leave," the attendant said, her tone unwavering. What struck Cora even more was the attendant's lack of interest in seeing her boarding pass or confirming her seat assignment. It was as though her presence in the business class cabin itself was the sole reason for this abrupt request. This puzzling and unexpected turn of events left Cora not only taken aback, but also with a growing sense of discomfort and unease about what might come next. As Cora's heart raced, she cast a bewildered glance around the cabin, hoping to find some sympathy or support among her fellow passengers. However, what struck her the most was the collective indifference that seemed to prevail. No one reacted to the flight attendant's curt and degrading tone. It was as though a heavy veil of silence had descended upon the entire business class section, isolating her in a bubble of humiliation and uncertainty. Feeling increasingly unwelcome and doubting her own worthiness to be in that elegant cabin, Cora's voice quivered as she uttered, "But I paid for this seat?" Her words, though hesitant, held a note of protest and desperation, a plea for the justice she believed was rightfully hers. Little did she know that her journey, which had begun with such excitement and anticipation, would now take an unexpected turn, one that would test her resolve and highlight the importance of empathy and compassion in the skies. The flight attendant who initially approached Cora seemed adamant and unwilling to engage in any conversation. It was as if she had made up her mind without considering Cora's side of the story. However, Cora's determination led her to pass her passport to another flight attendant, one who was more willing to investigate the situation further. This compassionate flight attendant took the time to double-check Cora's booking, hoping to uncover the truth. When the flight attendant returned, her pallid complexion told a story of shock and disbelief. She displayed the inside of Cora's passport to her colleagues, leaving them equally astonished. The reason behind Cora's refusal in business class and the flight attendant's reaction remained shrouded in mystery, creating a buzz of curiosity among the passengers and crew alike. As the tense situation unfolded, it became evident that something extraordinary, perhaps even extraordinary, was at the heart of this perplexing in-flight incident, and the truth was yet to be revealed. Cora's journey held a profound and heartwarming purpose. She was on her way to reunite with her daughter, Violet, who had recently welcomed a new life into the world. The joy of becoming a grandmother for the first time had been tinged with anxiety, as Cora had never experienced air travel before. The prospect of meeting her grandchild filled her with excitement and apprehension in equal measure. Understanding her mother's concerns, Violet orchestrated a thoughtful surprise, gifting Cora a coveted business class ticket. This unexpected gesture was a testament to the love and care shared between mother and daughter, designed to make Cora's inaugural flight experience as comfortable and stress-free as possible. It was a journey not just to a destination, but a journey of the heart, where family bonds and cherished moments would be at the forefront of Cora's adventure in the skies. Cora's upgrade to business class did wonders for her initial anxiety about flying. The prospect of extra comfort and attentive service put her more at ease. and she embarked on the journey with a sense of excitement rather than dread. She held the belief that the airline staff would be understanding and accommodating should her nerves get the best of her during the flight. Little did she know that her expectations of warmth and care were about to be challenged in an unexpected way. The treatment Cora was about to receive from the staff would be far from what she had anticipated. The shocking turn of events that awaited her on board would not only challenge her sense of comfort and security, but also leave her with lingering questions about the true motivations behind the airline's actions. It was a situation that would not only test her resolve, but also raise important questions about fairness and compassion in the world of air travel. On the day of her highly anticipated journey, Cora meticulously went through her checklist, ensuring that she had all the essentials in order. With her passport securely tucked away, her plane ticket at the ready, and her luggage meticulously prepared, she embarked on her adventure with a sense of meticulous preparation. Every detail was carefully considered to make her inaugural flight a smooth and memorable experience. Upon arriving at the airport, Cora was in for yet another delightful surprise, courtesy of her thoughtful daughter, Violet. As she stepped into the terminal, she discovered that Violet had gone the extra mile to make her journey even more special. Cora was ushered into the exclusive VIP section, an unexpected touch of luxury that added an extra layer of excitement and comfort to her travel experience. The sense of care and thoughtfulness that Violet had poured into this trip continued to warm Cora's heart, setting the stage for what should have been a truly exceptional journey. In the VIP section, Cora truly felt like royalty. With a mere handover of her passport and luggage to the attentive airport staff, her concerns melted away as they efficiently managed all the logistical details. This hassle-free experience allowed Cora to fully embrace the luxury of her surroundings. She was escorted to a comfortable lounge area where she could await her boarding call in style. Here, she had the choice to unwind on plush couches or indulge herself with a glass of fine wine at the well-appointed bar. The serene atmosphere and top-notch service cocooned her in a sense of relaxation and elegance, elevating her travel experience to an entirely new level. It was a moment of respite and indulgence before her flight, and Cora cherished every minute of this unexpected treat, courtesy of her daughter. Having been pampered and treated like a VIP throughout her journey, Cora naturally anticipated a continuation of the same regal treatment once she stepped on the plane. After all, her ticket was for a business-class seat, a symbol of comfort and luxury in air travel. As it was time to board the aircraft, Cora eagerly entered the car that would take her to the plane, her heart brimming with contentment and excitement. With trust in the airline's commitment to excellence, she stepped onto the aircraft without a second thought. Little did she know that this transition from the VIP lounge to the plane's cabin would mark the beginning of an unexpected and bewildering chapter in her journey. One that would ultimately leave her questioning the treatment she had received earlier in the day. As Cora confidently made her way onto the plane and encountered the slightly perplexed expressions of the airline staff, she couldn't help but notice the subtle hints of confusion on their faces. It was true. Business-class passengers typically included a mix of affluent travelers, and the gentleman who had boarded before her appeared to fit that profile. The contrast between Cora's presence and the usual clientele might have contributed to the staff's quizzical reactions. While the puzzled glances did catch her attention, Cora chose not to dwell on them. She reasoned that her daughter's thoughtful surprise, combined with the VIP treatment at the airport, might indeed be an unusual sight for the airline crew. With a sense of understanding and an inner assurance that she belonged in that cabin, Cora settled into her seat, ready to enjoy the comfort and amenities of business class, looking forward to the journey ahead. Little did she know that her unassuming presence was about to unveil a unique and surprising twist to her flight experience. As Cora settled into her plush seat, a sense of unease began to creep over her. The discreet huddling of two flight attendants in a corner of the cabin caught her attention. Their hushed whispers and furtive glances in her direction were hard to ignore, and it became increasingly evident that they were discussing something related to her. Their thinly veiled attempts to conceal their conversation only added to Cora's growing suspicion. The once pleasant atmosphere of anticipation had now transformed into a puzzling and uncomfortable situation. Cora couldn't help but wonder if there was more to her presence on the plane than met the eye. Questions swirled in her mind as she contemplated the reasons behind the flight attendant's secretive behavior. The air of mystery deepened, and Cora found herself on the verge of unraveling a baffling enigma that would soon cast a shadow over her journey. In an attempt to deflect her growing unease, Cora decided to divert her attention by picking up the glossy magazine conveniently placed in front of her seat. The vibrant images and intriguing articles momentarily succeeded in drawing her focus away from the puzzling behavior of the flight attendants. Lost in the world of words and images, she temporarily forgot about the whispered conversations and covert glances. However, her respite was short-lived. As the business-class cabin filled with fellow passengers, Cora was abruptly jolted back to the present moment by a stark and unmistakable omission. The flight attendants moved through the cabin, offering a refreshing glass of water to each traveler, yet inexplicably, Cora was overlooked. It was a gesture that cut through her previous distractions, leaving her feeling singled out and excluded. The sense of unease that had been building throughout the flight became even more pronounced, leaving Cora with a sense of bewilderment and isolation in the very place where she was meant to experience comfort and care. As the plane neared full occupancy, Cora couldn't help but notice that only a handful of passengers remained in the line to board. She decided to set the magazine aside, recognizing that it was time to mentally prepare herself for the upcoming takeoff. The hum of activity in the cabin seemed to envelop her, and she focused on gathering her thoughts. Suddenly, her attention was jolted back to the present as one of the flight attendants, now walking with a noticeable air of confidence, headed directly toward her seat. The combination of the flight attendant's assertive approach and the mounting tension in the cabin raised a sense of apprehension within Cora. She could sense that something significant was about to unfold, though the nature of this impending encounter remained shrouded in uncertainty. Cora was taken aback as the flight attendant approached her with a tone that felt decidedly condescending. The words, "Ma'am, I think we have a little problem," hung heavily in the air, causing a furrow to appear on Cora's forehead. She tried to maintain her composure and clarify the situation by inquiring, "Is this seat 3D?" The flight attendant, after briefly glancing at the seat number, confirmed, "Yes, this is seat 3D." This response left Cora thoroughly puzzled, as her boarding pass clearly indicated that seat 3D was indeed her assigned spot. The incongruity between her seat assignment and the flight attendant's remarks deepened the mystery surrounding her presence in the business-class cabin. Cora couldn't help but wonder if there was something amiss, and her sense of unease continued to intensify. Cora's response was one of simple clarity. With a warm and understanding smile, she calmly affirmed, "Well, I'm in the right seat then." She had expected that her straightforward confirmation would resolve any confusion, leading the flight attendant to withdraw and carry on with her duties. However, much to Cora's surprise, the flight attendant remained unmoved, her expression devoid of any reciprocation of kindness. Instead, the flight attendant, with an air of stern determination, repeated the unsettling request, "Ma'am, I'm going to have to ask you to leave." This abrupt and unwarranted demand left Cora stunned as she struggled to comprehend the unfolding situation. Her once pleasant journey had taken an unexpected and distressing turn, one that she was ill-prepared to navigate. The questions that had lingered in her mind were now demanding answers, and the true nature of the flight attendant's actions remained shrouded in mystery. Cora's astonishment deepened as the flight attendant's insistence persisted. Struggling to make sense of the situation, she quickly reached into her bag, her fingers anxiously sifting through her belongings in search of her boarding pass. Her heart raced as her hands closed around empty space. The boarding pass she was sure she had held when she boarded the plane was inexplicably absent. With a mounting sense of urgency and disbelief, she exclaimed. "But I paid for this seat." Her voice quivered with a mix of frustration and desperation as she tried to convey the validity of her claim. The missing boarding pass left her feeling vulnerable and exposed, raising unsettling questions about how and when it had disappeared. Cora was faced with an unexpected challenge, and the stakes of her predicament grew higher as she endeavored to uncover the truth behind this bewildering turn of events. Cora's bewilderment and growing frustration were palpable as she continued to insist that her boarding pass had been in her possession moments ago. Her voice quivered with confusion as she reiterated, "I swear it was right here." However, the flight attendant's demeanor remained unsympathetic and impatient, with a conspicuous display of annoyance as she tapped her foot and maintained an intimidating stance. The tense atmosphere on the plane became increasingly stifling, with an eerie silence descending upon the cabin. The passengers seated nearby couldn't help but cast furtive glances in Cora's direction, their curiosity piqued by the unfolding drama.
Also, if you have not done so already, please subscribe to our channel and click that notification bell to get inspired by these real-life stories every day. Now, back to the story.
Cora herself teetered on the brink of tears, overwhelmed by a sense of vulnerability and the inexplicable nature of the situation. It was a moment that had turned her ordinary journey into a high-stakes mystery, and the eyes of the entire cabin seemed to be upon her, awaiting resolution. The flight attendant's demands had grown increasingly stern and uncompromising. In a last-ditch effort to resolve the escalating situation, Cora pleaded with an earnest tone, "Please, let me call my daughter. She was the one who booked this seat. Please let me try to make this right, and I paid for this seat." Her voice trembled with desperation as she sought a lifeline to rectify the bewildering ordeal. Despite Cora's heartfelt plea and her attempt to provide an alternative solution, the flight attendant remained resolute. She repeated the ultimatum, casting a shadow of impending action. "Ma'am, you're holding up the plane. Either you go now, willingly, or we'll have to call the police." The gravity of the situation weighed heavily upon Cora as she grappled with the real possibility of her journey taking a legal turn, a distressing prospect she had never anticipated when she boarded the plane. As Cora glanced around the cabin, tears welled up in her eyes. She couldn't help but notice that every eye was trained on her, and the passengers were acutely aware of the distressing scene unfolding before them. The eerie silence continued to reign, and even the other flight attendants seemed strangely unresponsive, not offering any assistance or intervention. Feeling utterly helpless and emotionally drained, Cora was confronted with a stark reality that bore no resemblance to the comfortable and enjoyable plane ride she had imagined. The weight of her predicament bore down on her, leaving her with a sense of isolation and vulnerability. She grappled with the daunting question of how she would extricate herself from this inexplicable and unsettling situation, one that had thrown her journey into disarray and left her in a state of deep distress. The flight attendant's repeated calls snapped Cora back to the unsettling reality of her situation. Each utterance bore the weight of growing impatience and irritation. Cora found herself at a crossroads, torn between conflicting emotions and uncertain about the best course of action. The thought of leaving the plane raised a barrage of questions. Would she be able to board another flight to reach her destination? Why should she acquiesce when she was absolutely certain she was in the correct seat? These uncertainties swirled in Cora's mind, adding to her sense of injustice and confusion. She was faced with a critical decision that would profoundly impact her journey, and the truth behind this perplexing ordeal remained frustratingly elusive. Determined not to be unjustly removed from the plane, Cora made a resolute decision to stand her ground. Her conviction was unwavering. She knew she had to find her boarding pass to set things right. With renewed determination, she meticulously searched through her bag, casting an eye under her seat and even checking the seat pocket where she had earlier placed the magazine. However, no matter where she looked, her boarding pass remained frustratingly elusive. Anxiety began to creep in as she faced the troubling reality that her key piece of evidence seemed to have vanished without a trace. It was a perplexing mystery that deepened the sense of injustice surrounding her situation, leaving Cora with an urgent need to uncover the truth and clear her name. As the minutes ticked by, the flight attendant's annoyance grew more pronounced, mirroring the collective impatience that seemed to permeate the cabin. The audible sighs and groans from fellow passengers only added to the mounting frustration. From their perspective, it appeared that Cora was in the wrong for steadfastly refusing to leave her seat, and they were becoming increasingly eager for a resolution that would vindicate their impatience. The growing chorus of discontent among the passengers further isolated Cora, as it seemed that the majority believed she was the cause of the delay. The pressure continued to mount, making her resolve to prove her innocence even more imperative. Cora was now faced not only with the flight attendant's persistence, but also the impatience and skepticism of those around her, all of which made the need to find her missing boarding pass and resolve this baffling situation even more urgent. The sudden outburst from the middle-aged man caught Cora completely off guard. His harsh words, laced with disrespect and hostility, reverberated through the cabin. Shockingly, his outburst seemed to galvanize others. In an unsettling chain reaction, roughly 15 passengers leaped from their seats, joining in the chorus of hostility directed at Cora. The collective heckling and degrading remarks left Cora feeling utterly overwhelmed and vulnerable. It was a disheartening display of mob mentality, with passengers who had previously observed in silence now actively contributing to her distress. The situation had taken a distressing turn, as Cora found herself facing not only the airline staff's insistence, but also the venomous words of her fellow travelers. In the midst of this chaotic confrontation, Cora was left grappling with a sinking sense of isolation and injustice, desperately searching for a way to reclaim her dignity and prove her innocence. The overwhelming hostility from the passengers had left Cora in an excruciatingly uncomfortable and isolating situation. However, a glimmer of hope emerged when the pilot, who had evidently heard the disturbing threats and witnessed the escalating tension, left the cockpit with a concerned expression on his face. His presence signaled a potential shift in the dynamics of the situation. Approaching the irritated flight attendant, the pilot exchanged whispered words with her. Whatever was said appeared to prompt a change in her demeanor, and she followed him toward the galley. This sudden development injected a degree of uncertainty into the proceedings, leaving passengers to wonder about the nature of their conversation and what actions might be taken to address the tumultuous situation on board. For Cora, it was a moment that held the promise of resolution, though the ultimate outcome remained uncertain. Cora's hope that the pilot might intervene on her behalf was tinged with a lingering sense of uncertainty. With the mounting challenges she had faced on the plane, she couldn't help but wonder if she was running out of allies. The prospect of one more person opposing her was daunting, especially considering the pilot's pivotal role in this situation. As the flight attendant returned, her forced cheerfulness didn't escape Cora's keen observation. The apology that followed was accompanied by a renewed request for Cora's boarding pass. While the change in tone was somewhat reassuring, Cora remained cautious, aware that the situation was far from resolved. With a sense of resignation, she retrieved her personal effects once more, hoping that this time she would be able to produce the elusive boarding pass and bring an end to this bewildering ordeal. Cora let out a heavy sigh, her disappointment palpably, as she had envisioned a more amicable conversation. Nevertheless, she recognized that the flight attendant's inquiry was a necessary step towards resolving the issue that had disrupted her journey. With a resigned tone, Cora explained, "I've been trying to tell you that I can't find my boarding pass anywhere." This admission carried a sense of exasperation, as Cora had been desperately searching for the missing document to vindicate her claim. In response, the flight attendant turned to the pilot, seeking guidance or support. However, the pilot's shrug of defeat indicated that they were at an impasse, unable to find a clear resolution to this perplexing situation. For Cora, it was yet another moment of uncertainty, as she waited anxiously to see how the airline would proceed and if her ordeal would finally come to an end. The flight attendant's declaration, delivered with a smug smile, hit Cora like a hammer blow. The finality of those words, "No boarding pass, no flight," rang in her ears, leaving her with a sinking feeling of despair. It was as if the flight attendant had been waiting for this moment with a sense of vindication, and her gloating demeanor only added to Cora's distress. Desperately, Cora turned her gaze toward the pilot, her eyes filled with hope that he might still find a way to help her. However, the pilot's helpless expression conveyed that there was nothing more he could do. Cora's sigh of resignation was tinged with a mix of disappointment and gratitude for his earlier efforts. It was a moment of profound disappointment, as Cora came to terms with the fact that her journey had been irrevocably derailed by the inexplicable disappearance of her boarding pass and the flight attendant's unyielding stance. With her hopes dwindling and her journey hanging in the balance, Cora grasped at one final straw of hope. Her voice trembled with a plea as she implored, "Please, I got on this plane with my boarding pass. You have to believe me, as there is no other way in. You have to scan it to get through the gates." Tears welled up in her eyes as she desperately appealed to not only the flight attendant before her, but also to the other members of the cabin crew. In this moment of vulnerability and sincerity, Cora was baring her heart, hoping that someone would acknowledge the logic behind her argument and provide a lifeline that would allow her to continue her journey. It was a moment of high stakes, where the resolution hinged on whether her earnest words would be heard and understood by those who held the power to determine her fate. Cora's desperation led her to take another desperate measure, offering her passport as a form of identification to prove her claim. "If you look me up in the system, you will see I'm assigned this seat," she urged, her voice trembling with frustration and anxiety. She extended her passport toward the flight attendant, hoping that a quick check would vindicate her. However, the flight attendant's response was far from sympathetic. Dismissive and arrogant, she declined Cora's offer, dismissing it with a flippant comment. "Do you even know how long that would take?" she retorted, her tone laden with condescension. "You have to leave now." Cora found herself trapped in an unjust situation, where reason and logic seemed to hold no sway, and the clock was ticking down on her chances of salvaging her journey. The ordeal had taken an emotional toll, leaving her with a sense of powerlessness and frustration as she grappled with the incomprehensible situation before her. In a moment of desperation, Cora reached out to another flight attendant, one whose demeanor conveyed a more compassionate and understanding attitude. This second flight attendant accepted Cora's passport, prompting an irritated reaction from her colleague. The annoyed flight attendant shot a disdainful glance at her fellow crew member, who responded with a facial expression that seemed to say, "I'm sorry, but what else could I do?" The subtle exchange of glances between the flight attendants underscored the complexity of the situation and the differing perspectives within the cabin crew. Cora's hopes rested on the outcome of this passport check, as she prayed that her information would be verified and the truth would finally come to light. It was a pivotal moment in a journey that had taken an unexpected and turbulent turn, and Cora's fate now hung in the balance as she awaited the verdict. As the compassionate flight attendant left the plane with Cora's passport in hand, a collective sigh of annoyance rippled through the cabin. The passengers, already weary from the delay and the dramatic scene that had unfolded, grew increasingly impatient as they realized that this latest development might further prolong their departure time. Outside the plane, the kind flight attendant hurried to the reception desk, where she requested assistance in looking up Cora's information in the system. It was a task that required patience and diligence, as they sought to resolve the mystery surrounding Cora's boarding pass and the validity of her seat assignment. The fate of the entire flight hung in the balance, and the passengers could only wait, their frustration growing with each passing minute as they anticipated the outcome of this crucial inquiry. The return of the compassionate flight attendant, her demeanor clearly far from pleased, was met with heightened anticipation and tension in the cabin. She approached the irate flight attendant and, without saying a word, opened Cora's passport, revealing its contents. The annoyed flight attendant's eyes fell upon the inside of Cora's passport, and in an instant, her expression transformed from annoyance to shock. A pallor overtook her face as she gazed at the passport, a reaction that did not go unnoticed by the passengers who had witnessed the entire ordeal. The dramatic shift in the flight attendant's demeanor raised a multitude of questions among the passengers, leaving them eager to uncover the mystery behind Cora's predicament and the significance of the passport's contents. The revelation seemed to be a turning point, one that held the potential to clarify the situation that had thrown Cora's journey into turmoil. The flight attendant's abrupt change in demeanor was both surprising and intriguing. She appeared to stumble over her words as she offered a heartfelt apology, a stark contrast to her previous attitude. Her repeated apologies conveyed a sense of genuine remorse for the distressing ordeal Cora had endured. Cora was encouraged to take a seat, and the flight attendants hastily left her alone, gathering in the galley. Positioned only 2 rows away, Cora couldn't help but eavesdrop on their conversation. Her curiosity piqued by the abrupt shift in their behavior and the need to understand the truth behind the mysterious events that had unfolded during her journey. It was a moment of revelation and potential closure as she strained to listen in on their hushed discussion, eager to finally uncover the answers she had been seeking. The hushed conversation among the flight attendants revealed a shocking truth. Cora was recognized as the mother of Violet, a name seemingly familiar to them. The revelation prompted a wave of panic and concern among the cabin crew as the realization that they had subjected their superior's mother to such an ordeal began to sink in. As the plane finally departed and Cora was once again treated with utmost courtesy and respect, a heavy cloud of discomfort hung over her. She couldn't help but feel that the special treatment she was receiving was not due to her own merit, but rather her connection to her daughter, who held a position of authority within the airline. It was a bittersweet ending to a tumultuous journey, leaving Cora with mixed emotions and a lingering sense of unease about the true nature of the service she had received. Cora wasted no time in recounting her harrowing experience on board to her daughter, Violet. She shared every detail, sparing nothing about the way she had been treated by the flight attendants who had failed to assist her and made her feel unwelcome. Violet, understandably upset by her mother's ordeal, took swift action. That evening, Violet made calls to each of the flight attendants involved and, upon hearing Cora's account, decided to terminate their employment immediately. With this decisive action, the story came to an end, highlighting the importance of treating all passengers with dignity and respect, regardless of their background or connections. It served as a powerful reminder that every passenger's experience should be characterized by professionalism and courtesy, ensuring a safe and pleasant journey for all.